Revs starting to rise. This field ready to face the start. A huge crowd in at Phillip Island on a beautiful Sunday. Waiting for the opening round of the 2001 Shell Championship Series. Will it be Holden? Will it be Ford? 5 Fords, 5 Holdens in the top 10. We haven't had these two manufacturers as evenly matched as this for a long time. And look at that magnificent sight from our cherry picker.
Waiting for the lights. Rev limiters popping.
Oh, a long time.
We are racing in the 2001 Shell Championship Series, and the Holden Racing Team Commodores have made brilliant starts.
Scafie just got the jump, didn't he?
Then Bright. Marcus Ambrose slots into third. There's a real jostle on for the minors here. Paul Radisich will be the next man to drop into fourth by the look of it. So Skate through the southern loop, turn 2. 4 Tickford Racing cars line astern. Trevor Ashby away at the back of the field.
It's like a nice clean start as the field come out of Southern Loop for the first time. 15 Fords and 17 Holdens throughout this capacity field. Very evenly matched, the two brands now. Mark Skate, continuing that form he showed in qualifying, leading this big field down through Honda for the first time. Problems here. Might be Tandem.
Oh, is it?
It was Bargwana, 35, and he's right out in that new area that's been completely revamped since we were here last year. They're previously severe damage as well in the right-hand corner of the car.
Boy, that's not a good way to start the season with a new sponsor. Look at the damage on the side of the ICS Ford.
And lucky to get out of it as well.
Well, thought it was a relatively clean start. Man who's made the cleanest start is Mark Skate. He's already opened a gap of 2 or 3 car lengths over his teammate. Marcus Ambrose in there in third. Radisich in fourth. Just watch this big field muscle their way around MG.
Remember, this is 28 laps, and it has a compulsory pit stop. This is a different tyre to the tyre that the teams raced on here last year. We've mentioned it a couple of times already, but it's particularly significant for the teams that don't test here. The Holden Racing Team test here. So does the Ford Tickford Racing Team. Castrol Perkins Engineering run here, but the majority of the other teams are testing at other circuits, and this is quite unique in the way in which it works a car and the way in which it works a tyre. So look at a replay and just see what happened here. Bargwana gets very wide at turn 3, and that's a terrible place to be out in the kitty litter there. And that previously was a clump of tea trees. Had they been there now, Jace would be in a lot more strife than he is. And now we'll see what happened with Mark Larkham here. He's on the run up to Siberia, which is turn 5. Oh, he jumps on the brakes, gets it crossed up, locks the rears, throws it off into the grass, and then it's been very wet here in the last couple of days. We've had an amazingly warm summer in Victoria, and then the heavens opened in this past week, so the outfield's quite slippery. Fortunately, Mark didn't hit anything solid, but he's got a lot of damage in the right-hand corner there.
Just had a quick word to Mark Larkham's team down here in pit lane. They tell me there's absolutely nothing wrong with the car, just a lot of damage to the driver's side door. Larko's okay, he's going to keep pressing on. Grant?
Deal with Jason Bargwana, and as reported, his car's okay too. Just have to watch the temperatures now. He's taken on a bit of some dirt in the front of the car. That might cause the temperature to rise a little. Apparently with John Bauer.
Thank you, Grant. Well, what he's referring to there, we got it in kind of Morse code, but we knew basically what he was on about, and it's that these cars gather up enormous amounts of gravel and dirt in the front of them when you go off. It goes into the brake ducting, into the radiator intake. So what they'll be carefully monitoring now is engine temperature and just making sure that all the systems check over the next couple of laps. Hopefully he can get back on and score points, and that is a significant point, Mark, because points are scored up and down the entire field this year. There's the margins. It's 2 seconds. What a terrific start on cold tyres from Mark Skate.
1:35.67 for Skate. Fastest lap of the race so far. Keep in mind the lap record is a 1:33.43 set by Craig Lowndes on the previous more specialised or hand-built tyre. Now they're on a production tyre, so we expect to lose a little bit of speed.
Does look like Ambrose is really can't wait to get past Brighty.
Well, he's really close, isn't he? So in those opening shots a little bit further up the field, he's hovering around the back of the number 2 Holden Racing Team Commodore. Meanwhile, this is further back in the pack. Paul Radisich, Stephen Richards and Glenn Seaton bearing down on him in the FTR Fords. Then it's Garth Tander in there too, Russell Engel. Craig Lowndes, his debut in the Shell Championship Series for Ford Motor Company. He's just in behind the Castrol car.
That's an awkward little group to be in, and what's going to be happening back in the pit lane at the moment is that engineering staff are going to be on calculators and spreadsheets just trying to determine the way in which this race is going to unfold and what the best strategy is going to be. See, what you don't want to be at the moment is mixed up in the middle of this, because it just costs you time. Meanwhile, Scapey's got empty track. He just disappears. So if you were buried in the middle of this little group at the moment, as soon as the window opened at lap 10, I'd be out of it in a hurry.
Well, yeah, because otherwise you'd be... Oh, yeah, that's McConville.
Yep.
That's the exit to Lukey Heights. He's gone around there in that slow little right-hander at turn 8.
Look at this, Marcus Ambrose. This is the battle for second. Jason Bright, Marcus Ambrose. Ambrose making his V8 supercar debut.
It's going to be really interesting. It's all about looking after your tyres, and you wait until you get sort of 10, 12 laps into it, and it's going to be interesting to see who's sort of in good nick.
Well, it really is a situation of tyre management. 45-minute races, you've got to protect those rear tyres.
Ambrose, yes, he's got him.
Yeah, but he Well, he got away with it.
Straight on and lock her up.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good bit of control. Good move to get off the brakes there, because he was heading straight on at Honda.
He also required the cooperation of Jason Bright.
Yeah. No,
here's a replay of what happened to Cameron McConville. Shell Helix replay shows that he got a little bit of help from, is it Dougal McDougall? So that was an interesting situation for that manoeuvre down at turn 4, and had Jason Bright not been able to just see him coming and give him some space, that certainly would have ended in tears.
Some nervous faces down here at the moment in the Stone Brothers racing pit. You talked about that moment for Marcus Ambrose a moment ago. You should have seen the mouths of some of the guys here as they watched him carrying through. The other cause for concern for them is there is some damage to the front left of David Bernard's Caltex Falcon. They had contemplated bringing him in. They watched the car come past pit lane just a moment ago. They've elected to leave David out there.
David Bernard running back in 15th. Long way behind his teammate now, who's forced his way through into second. Very much had Mark Scape in his gun sights. Ambrose has been a sensation in his V8 supercar debut. Just 24 years of age, the young Tasmanian. A guy with an enormous amount of open-wheeler experience in Europe. Now he's come back very much focused on success in V8 supercar, and he's off to a flying start.
Fantastic debut he's made when you think about it. You know, to get on the pole at the Grand Prix and then to be in the first 3 here, for a guy that's starting out, it's pretty amazing there, isn't it?
We're looking rearward from Paul Radisish's Shell Helix Falcon. That's Stephen Richards immediately behind, and right behind Stephen is team boss Glenn Seaton. These guys battling at the moment for 4th, 5th, 6th.
These will be the ones to watch, won't they, when that pit window opens after lap 10? Because as you say, you just get caught up in this. You're running in a bumper-to-bumper freight train. You're not going to move backwards or forwards.
No, and as you can see, there's a great group of cars in this, and it becomes very frustrating for a driver because you just can't get your rhythm. These cars are very big. They tend to blindside you when they're all in and around you. You're not as easy to try and pick that sort of last little metre or 2 under brakes, and it just takes the edge off your lap time. And that's what this game's all about. If you drop a 10th or 2 per lap for 10 laps, you've dropped 2 seconds.
And as we're talking about with tyre management, Neil, if you're not getting those smooth, consistent laps, you're on and off the throttle a little bit more, you're giving your tyres a harder time.
Now we're on board with Garth Tander. This is behind Glenn Seaton, turn 9. Short shoot run up to 4th. He stays with 4th, so some drivers grab 5th early, and this is the run onto the main straight. Beautiful corner, and it's a wonderful circuit, as you've heard all of us say. So let's just update that order. It's Scape, Ambrose, Bright, Radisish, Richards, Seaton, Tander, Lowndes, Ingle and Kelly.
So a big gap there with Mark Scape, 3.4 seconds the lead over Ambrose before they cross the start-finish line. But Ambrose is just about a 1/10 of a second shy that time. So we're going to watch that gap between our race leader and second place, see if Ambrose can close on the Holden Racing Team car.
It looks like Bright is dropping back towards Radisic, or vice versa. The Radisic-led group's catching up.
A little bit of a listen to Garth Tander at work. Let's go on board. gives you a great idea of just how much these cars wriggle around this circuit. And look at that top speed, just on 280 kilometres an hour on the approach to turn 1, back to 5th gear. And you can see that Glenn's just occasionally adopting an ever so defensive line here and there to try and keep Garth at bay.
Real traffic jam in this battle here. Paul Radicic is starting to close the gap to Bright. He's pulled 0.3 of a second off him before. He's got this big pack of cars bearing down behind him.
Just down here at the John Faulkner Racing pit at the moment, the team is standing by for what looks like a full tyre change. The pit window, bear in mind, is not open at this stage, but John had a major moment a couple of laps ago as he was coming onto the front straight. He ended up spearing off onto the grass, so possibly the tyres have been flat spotted. Interesting strategy point for you as well. Larry Perkins, who's in around about 11th position at the moment, is talking about coming in on lap 12. So an early stop within that pit window for Larry Perkins.
He's doing average lap times in the low 1:35 region at the moment, a long way from the qualifying pace, but remember the tyres are now starting to get pretty doughy, a little bit hot, and we're watching some manoeuvring here, and it's Radicic and Richards rounding up John Faulkner, and the cars are a lot heavier than, of course, when they qualified.
Interesting thing's going to be, when do they actually bring Mark Scaife in for his pit stop? We're discussing this during the break, and it has to be a situation where they let Scaife back out so he's not caught in a whole lot of traffic. It could actually be a problem for them.
That's right. Oh, and Lowndes gets into the back of Tander, and a bit of frustration creeping in now because this little pack that we've spoken about a couple of times is really pressurising. Glimpse there of Todd Kelly and Greg Murphy. So Craig got in a bit hot, gave Garth a helping hand into turn 4 at the right-hand hairpin. And yeah, just to go back to that point, Mark, it's a good one. We're looking here at Craig and the Gibson Motorsport Falcon. If you're in this pack, you're probably starting to think about getting out of the group as quickly as you can when the window opens at lap 10. But if you're Mark, you're probably going to, depending on tyre degradation, maybe contemplate doing it as late in the window as you can, because you don't want to be placed back on the circuit in the middle of all the traffic. If you need to watch Formula 1 to see in which the way they do it.
Well, they'll certainly be watching that at Holton Racing Team. They've gone through every possible scenario, and they'll be watching Mark's position on the track and trying to pick a spot. But you can be pretty sure this queue of cars here is going to break up very quickly once that pit window opens. Everyone's going to be looking to try and leapfrog each other, try and get some track advantage.
Guys, just by way of comparison, this little bunch that we're looking at here, they're lapping in high 35, so they're about a second, or it's actually, that's a bit rich to say that, it's about 7 or 8 tenths of a second slower than the lead group. And we're lap 10 of 28, so this mythical window that we talk about is now open in terms of pit stops.
This is, look at this.
Well, that is the next time around.
So once our race leader Mark Scaife completes this lap, the pits will officially be open. So this is going to be interesting now. Watch all sorts of mayhem break loose in pit lane. It's going to be like a war zone.
Yeah, now the other thing you don't want to do is go in line astern with everybody, because all you do is recreate the situation.
Well, this is going to be fascinating. Watch this unfold. We're only half a lap away from that situation. Mark Scaife, a race leader, fastest man on the circuit. He's consistently set the fastest lap of 1:35.06, so he's almost in the 1:34s. And let's have a look at this on the Shell Helix replay. Craig Lowndes coming right up behind the Valvoline car and
bang.
Oof.
Yeah, and at this stage he was locked up, so he was already in white knuckle territory. But their little battle continues, and fortunately both able to get away with it.
The frantic activity in pit lane that you talked about, Neil, looks like about getting underway right now. We've got both the Valvoline Cummins race team and Dick Johnson Racing on standby. So pit stop's about to get underway.
Yeah, you better be ready for it, Rusty, because I reckon it's going to start happening pretty soon.
I'd have to say, if I was Gibbo, Fred Gibson, you'd want to get Lowndes out of that, wouldn't you? Because
well, the Valvoline guys are standing by, but the other thing that's going to happen here is that everybody will watch everybody else and see who blinks first.
Yeah.
Barry, watching the look on your face then when you saw the way in which Garth's car leapt out of that second gear corner at MG, that thing really punched out quickly, so either in terms of rear tyre grip or engine torque, he had a nice little advantage there.
Yeah, it almost looked like something was wrong with Lowndes' car, didn't it?
A little bit further back, Russell Ingall and Greg Murphy fighting over 9th place. Look how close it is here behind the Valvoline car. Craig Lowndes trying to force his way out of this traffic jam.
Looks to me like Craig's stronger in the medium to high speed corners, but Garth's better in terms of traction off the slower corners. Stevie Johnson is in.
So Steve Johnson currently running a little bit further back in the pack.
Now, folks, the rules dictate that you've got to completely replace the set of tyres, or you are allowed to diagonal the hot tyres that are on the car. But at the moment, these guys, for time purposes, have just done a complete set change. And that's what we're going to see week in, week out of the championship this year.
That's actually going to work very well for Stephen Johnson, because he was back, I think he was outside the top 20 last time I looked. He was in 25th position when he pitted. We got the Valvoline car in there too. So these guys are actually going to leapfrog the field. The field's going to start coming back to them. So they're going to be pretty well placed later in the race.
This is a procedure that's being rehearsed in workshops around Australia. It has been for the last 12 months, really, not just weeks, over and over and over again, because there's a human element now. It's not just about the engineering and the balance in the car and the performance of the driver, but many other team members are involved, and that's a great thing.
Another one peeling off into pit lane there. We're in-car, the Kmart in-car camera with Greg Murphy. His debut for the TWR-based team.
Look at the Ingles thing. It's really
remember, here last year, Russell was in strife with rear tyres very early, and Murphy smells blood. He wants to run down the inside under brakes for turn 1, and I don't know whether that's enough. Yes, it is.
Yes.
And then the fact that Russell yielded tends to suggest to me that he's not in a fighting mood, which means that maybe the car balance is not quite what he wants. So he's in survival mode, not elbows up mode.
So the order at the moment, Mark Scaife, he's leading by 4.4 seconds now over Marcus Ambrose, not the Ford
Stevie
credit.
Richards.
FDR cars in.
Stephen Richards, as you mentioned, has come in. This is looking like a very fast stop. They've thrown 4 tyres on it, although the guy on the back right-hand side of the car has struggled to get the tyre on. Stephen flies out of pit lane, and Dick Johnson Racing are standing by as well for Paul Radicic.
And the significant point there is this battle continues between Murphy and Ingle. You won't want to be out on the outside there, Russell. But the significant point in all that, Greg, is that the cars are going out on stone-cold tyres. So the first lap or two is a bit tippy-toe here and there.
Been watching these times.
Oh, look, there's one of the...
yeah, now, is that Bargwanna who was in trouble? Now, Bauer's got a problem in the pit lane, and whatever his problem is seems to have him grounded in there for the moment.
Just been watching the lap times of our race leaders, Mark Scaife and Marcus Ambrose. Ambrose was quicker than Scaife that last lap around for the first time, so maybe the tyre situation is starting to come into play.
Out here in pit lane at the moment with the Gary Rogers Motorsport team, and I can tell you it is not going to be just a standard tyre stop for Garth Tander. We understand there may be a power steering problem for GT, and he's struggling to steer this car at the moment.
Okay, so it was Tander that we saw in the background there. I thought it might have been Bargwanna who'd made a stop, and maybe there was a finger problem, but he's wobbling back around the circuit.
More cars coming into pit lane.
Well, isn't this interesting, guys? We're only 13 laps into this 28-lapper, the first race of the season, and all these things to talk about. So many things happening. Radicic in here.
Still the battle for the lead continues. Mark Scaife 4.6 seconds in front of Marcus Ambrose. That first and second hasn't changed. Jason Bright there too.
See, the rule makers have done a great job in many respects, making these cars very even in their general performance across various teams, various drivers, and both the brands. The downside to that is that what tends to happen then is you can end up with line astern racing, which has been one of the criticisms from time to time. We're looking here at Paul Radicic. It's a very slow stop. But when you add this human element, look how congested that pit lane is. When you add the human element, you can tip all that upside down. That's the beauty of the pit stops.
If you look at the angle Garth's gone in at as well, they're going to have to push him backwards out of that to get him out of it.
You must hear me if I'm talking to you right now.
You're on there.
Because I'm just passing information.
So you've got a power steering problem at the front of Garth's car, a shrug of the shoulders.
Mike Exel, the chief there, shrugging his shoulders, not quite sure what the problem is, but that's very expensive. Crews yelling at each other.
Just a nightmare to get at anything down there.
And here comes the race leader.
And it looks like Marcus Ambrose is in behind him, is he? Yep, the Pertec Ford's coming in as well. So this is our race leader in second place. So they decided to bring Scaife in. 13 laps completed. He's been the fastest man, consistently the fastest man in the opening sector of this race. Let's see how quickly the Holden Racing team work through their tyre change.
Well, this is going very smoothly indeed for the Holden Racing team, and I can tell you Jeff Greck raced up pit lane there a short time ago to have a word to Gary Rogers and the team. They were concerned at the angle of Garth's car, and it might affect Mark in his pit stop.
13.2 seconds.
And he's come out in a very nice spot because there's nobody immediately in front and nobody immediately behind. Seaton's in for his stop.
Well,
the new leader is Jason Bright.
And Ambrose hasn't got out yet.
That was beautifully timed by Holden Racing team. Marcus Ambrose has rejoined as well.
So they've gained probably 4 seconds in the pits, I would say.
This is going to win or lose the championship this year. The pressure on the pit crews is going to be enormous. Jason Bright, our race leader.
Now, the other thing that's going to come into play here is the way in which people can punch speed out on cold tyres for a lap or two. What happens when the turn bows off, looks like he's got he's gone in the runoff area down at turn 4 into the hairpin. And it's a very awkward place to manoeuvre. Remember, the outfield's quite wet at the moment. We've had a lot of rain down here in the last couple of days. There, it is a great shot. That's where the old Phillip Island circuit once extended up to a very similarly shaped hairpin. It was shortened for safety reasons when the track was rebuilt for the Motorcycle Grand Prix many years ago. And Bowie's gone in there with a problem. A lot of safety modifications made to the circuit since we last raced here. Very, very good ones, very positive changes.
So Craig Lowndes comes in. He was running as high as 3rd. And now he's coming into pit lane for his compulsory stop. Jason Bright, I believe, is still out on the circuit. Greg Murphy in 2nd. So Craig Lowndes now coming in as we go through this confusing time in the race with these constantly changing positions as cars come in and out of pit lane. The Monroe pit stop counter running at the lower left-hand side of your screen. You can see how quickly the teams are working through. 13 seconds seems to be a pretty good time so far.
Yeah, well,
excellent. Excellent
good
job.
one. Very, very good.
Very quick time from the Gibson Motorsport operation.
He's got a good little margin at the moment. We're still going through that flurry of activity in the pit lane, and this lap Greg is due in.
And he's just 20 seconds up the road from Mark Larkham, the only other car in that leading bunch not to have pitted. Effectively, your race leader is Mark Scaife, who's about 4.5 seconds behind Larkham, and about 30 seconds down the road for Murphy. But by the time Murphy and Larkham have made their stops, it should be Scaife, Bright, Lowndes and Marcus Ambrose. That's going to be your top 4.
Don't forget, in a couple of weeks' time, we go back to Adelaide for a showcase event, the Clipsal 500, Saturday and Sunday, the 7th and 8th of April, on air between 1 and 5 Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Well, Craig Lowndes has done very well out of that stop, Neil. That was a very quick stop by Gibson Motorsport, and he really has clawed up some track position.
34.3 on the last lap as Murph comes in. Let's listen to the radio.
We're laughing. The pit lane is nice and open, so just take your time, Murph, and we're ready for you, okay? Have a drink.
See that very slow entry speed. It's a 60km/h speed limit all the way in.
Great stopping on the 10 and 4, mate.
Just making sure that Greg stops on the spot, on the marks. The reason they did that, Mark, was that the approach speed in there was sort of well over 200 k's to the world's tightest, slowest chicane, and it was very dangerous. Now Murph has a drink. It's pretty hot in there. These cars are going to be between 50 and 60 degrees Celsius.
The question is, can he emerge in front of Bright? He was 37 seconds in front of Bright when he peeled off.
Good stop.
Very good stop. Now, look at him just staring at that pit lane speed. There's no electronic limiters on a V8 supercar.
So Bright got in front of him.
But it's still an excellent bit of pit work from those guys. So the new order at the moment is Scaife, Bright, Lowndes, Ambrose, Murphy, Stephen Richards, Stephen Johnson, Russell Ingall, Todd Kelly and Larry Perkins. And look at this little battle here.
This is the battle for second. This is what happens when all the pit stops have done and you get the overlap. Jason Bright finds himself in 2nd place, 13 seconds behind his teammate Mark Scaife, who's leading. And look at Craig Lowndes now, right up behind the Holden Racing Team number 2.
Braking performance on the Gibson Motorsport car is just fantastic there at the moment. It's taking ground off Jason, putting him under pressure. This will be a great battle. They made tiny little trim adjustments to go. Oh, and he's given Bridie a hello and welcome.
Well, look at this. The team he used to drive for, the team that really put Craig Lowndes on the map. Now he's giving them plenty in the opposition brand. A great battle here. Lowndes just sneaks up the inside. And this is where Craig Lowndes, when you look at it from outside, looks so intimidating when he is following another competitor. He darts left, he darts right. He really has the car dancing around on its toes. And look at Marcus Ambrose coming into this battle as well.
Well, I'm down here with John Bauer. John, what's the problem? You've retired.
Well, mate, earlier in the race, I may be accused of being a bit of a veteran here, but earlier in the race, David Besnard came down the inside of me where there wasn't room, hit me in the back, bounced along the side of me, and eventually finished up buried in my front wheel. And it was quite a hard hit, and it's obviously cracked the hub, and the hub's broken. But I'm sure the stewards will do something about it, because it is absolutely lunacy.
Is that something that you can replace before race 2?
Oh yeah, of course. We'll put a new hub on it, but we're having quite a good race, and because some young lunatic hits you, I mean, can't these blokes drive without running into people?
Well, intense feelings down here in the Cat Racing team. Thanks, John.
The big loser of out of the pit stops had to be Ambrose. On the first lap round, he was 8 seconds behind Scaife. So that's you can say that he lost at least 6 or 7 seconds.
I think Paul Radicic, it's amazing. He's right back in 12th place now in the Shell Ford as a result of that pit stop. So it just shows how critical it's going to be as this year unfolds to get that strategy and get that pit change speed right. But look what we've ended up with here. Great tactical battle, and this is a real tyre management situation. See who can look after their tyres best now as they run toward the flag.
It certainly seemed like it took a little longer for Bridie's tyres to just pressure up and come up to operating temperature, and he's now stabilised the lap speed and held a margin over Craig over this past lap, but not before Craig was able to give him a little wake-up call here and there. The problem is that it gave incentive to Marcus while all that was going on, so Marcus bought into the battle as well, but now pretty even gaps between them.
Craig Lowndes, the fastest lap of the race so far, a 1:34.34. Scapes just done a 1:34.56. He's pumped it out to 13.7 seconds, the gap. But Lowndes is showing very good race speed here.
Lowndes, he said yesterday, he's got the best. He said as a race car, it's lovely. You know, definitely good setup.
Certainly Scapes got some good speed here as well. 13.6 seconds, so the gap between himself and Jason Bright has stabilised. Bright trying to close the gap to his teammate, but he's got his mirrors full of 2 Fords.
And in terms, sorry Mark, in terms of taking the official compulsory stop, the pit window is now closed. That doesn't mean people can't come to the pits, but you can't do your compulsory stop in it.
Spare a thought for those guys, Neil, during the course of that pit stop window, even though it is now closed. I'm down here with one of the red-hot wheels, which has just come off Jason Bargwanna's car a couple of laps ago. You can see the tyre wear here on it. The rim itself is, in temperature, is probably up around 100 degrees. And in this area here, where the guys tend to sort of pull the tyres off, the disc brakes inside this area here get up around 600 to 700 degrees at Phillip Island. So pretty tough working conditions for the crews in pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to keep your hands and fingers away from that. And I guess there is the risk, Neil, this year, as the pressure builds, we're going to see, hopefully not, some injuries to people, because it's going to be very dangerous under that pressure.
Well, fumbling, not necessarily injuries, but fumbling will be an issue, and that'll affect the outcome of races. And Craig, again, having a look down the inside of Jason Bright as they go down through that very tight, slow right-hand. It's quite a slow corner, about 70-odd Ks, 75 Ks. Don't forget, if you want to find out more about the cars and the stars of the V8 Supercar Show, you can log on to our website, www.v8supercar.com.au. All the information about the points, the teams, the drivers, and everything you need to know about V8 Supercar.
Well, you've got to say this has been a very impressive debut, not only by Ambrose, but Lowndes with this team. Earlier yesterday, that Gibson Motorsport Ford was going 2 seconds off the pace that they wanted, and they dialed it in the space of 2 sessions. So they've made an enormous gain in a very short period of time.
Good chemistry between Oscar, Craig's engineer, and Craig himself. They're working well together. They're speaking the same language, and that's enabled them to bring the car in from what was a long way outside the performance window. It was a long way from the sweet spot when they got here. This is an interesting little battle. 2 teammates here, Stephen Richards and Greg Murphy, just warring over the same centimetre of road.
Yep, Stephen Richards in 5th, Murphy in 6th. This is the battle for 5th place. If you look at the order, Mark Scape 13 seconds in front of Jason Bright in 2nd, Craig Lowndes and Marcus Ambrose. This is the battle for 5th between Stephen Richards and Greg Murphy. Stephen Johnson, as a result of that early stop, the field's come back to him. He's now up in the top 10 in 7th. Russell Ingall in 8th. Todd Kelly in 9th in the 2nd of the Kmart Commodores. And rounding out the top 10, Larry Perkins.
Well, the news down here in pit lane for Paul Radicic is that he's struggling big time out there. For some reason, his car just won't turn in. He's complaining of massive understeer that's so bad, he says it feels like I'm driving with 2 flat tyres on the front end. He also had a terrible pit stop where one of the wheels wouldn't come off, and that's why he's now down in 15th position.
How quickly it can change, and isn't that a graphic view of how much a V8 Supercar moves around when the tyres get a bit hot and soggy? This track is probably undeniably one of the toughest places in Australia, if not the world, on a racing tyre. These cars are 1,350 kilograms plus fuel and oil plus a driver, so we're talking a 1.5 tonne equation. The tyres are not overly wide, and they swirl and wriggle around and they get hot, and at this point of the race the cars are hard to drive. Murphy and Richards side by side. Murphy up the inside at Siberia. No room here. The 2 cars absolutely locked together. He looks over. What are you up to? Richo, give me a bit of room. Richo does that. Now they go side by side through the kick. Oh, Murph has to get out of it. heart rate's up.
Door handle stuff at 200 Ks. Former teammates in Holden. Now they're in opposite brands and opposite teams as they ride over Lukey Heights. Stephen Richards defending hard in the FTR Ford, but look at Murphy in the Kmart machine.
Rear brakes.
Bit of a hit now, Murphy. Up the inside, goes to the outside. Can Richards defend on the inside? He comes back in, then door to door. Still side by side as they arrow back towards the straight. Richards just has to pull out of it. Fantastic stuff.
Good motor racing. Great bit of professionalism from both those drivers there. They both had the opportunity to have...
Really good. Well done, mate. Just head down and concentrate on buys and bars.
Yeah, really both had the opportunity to have each other off then, and they didn't, and that's professionalism.
Yeah, great stuff. The V8 Supercar pack.
5 laps to go.
So the order at the moment, Mark Scaife, he's just been monitoring that gap, 14 seconds. It was down to about 13.5. So Jason Bright has just been able to stabilise. 1:34.56, the fastest lap for Scaife, but that's pumped out to a high 1:35 now. But he's not under any pressure. He's got a very good cushion there between himself and his teammate. But look what his teammates...
It's a mega margin. I mean, that's an extraordinary margin when we can't really say enough about that. And Mark and his team, his engineers, have done a great job to get that kind of margin. You just don't see that normally. Look at this. More action in the field.
It's absolutely scorched it. A little bit further back in the pack, Tom Kelly
and Ingle.
Yep.
This is the battle for 8th and 9th. I tell you, that little battle there for 2nd, 3rd and 4th between Bright, Lowndes and Ambrose is it's gradually getting a bit of preload in it, isn't it?
I tell you, how good is it for Lowndes when you think about it? I mean, that 3rd position is quite incredible when you think it's an old car from last year. It's good effort now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Guys, the cost for making an error in pit lane has just been realised. Ray Robbins from Avesco has just effected a stop-go penalty for both Larry Perkins and Rodney Forbes. Both have come in and served it for not sticking to the 60km/h speed limit here in pit lane.
Yeah, it's going to be a big issue this year, Rusty. Speeding in pit lane
and it's so very easy to do.
Oh, yeah. Keep in mind the teams also have to remove the coloured Velcro strip from the rear window of the car to tell the officials that the tyre change has been affected. If one of the crew forgets to remove that Velcro strip, the car has to be penalised as well. So there's a lot to take into account in a very short period of time in the pressure of pit lane.
It's a long lane at 60 Ks, and these cars have got 600 odd horsepower. You're driving them along in 2nd gear. You tend to left foot brake and just sort of hold the car at a speed. But they also can, the engines can hunt at that speed as well, and they just go whoop, whoop, and jump out from under you and suddenly doing 75 Ks or something. It's a very disciplined thing that the driver has to do to make sure that he concentrates on getting that right.
It's always the same thing when you come off the racetrack. Your brain's at 270 Ks an hour, then you go down a pit lane on a motorbike or in a car or anything. It just seems so slow.
3 laps remaining for race leader Mark Scaife. The gap between himself and Bright just changing by a 1/10 or 2 each lap, but Mark Scaife has this race by the throat. He really is controlling it from the front. A big buffer, 13 seconds now between himself and his teammate.
Yeah, and he's rolling out of it in terms of his lap speed now, so he's protecting his tyres, which is smart. It gives him a wider choice for the 2nd race, and there's McConville off again. Remember, he had troubles in the opening lap with Dougal McDougall. This is on the exit of turn 4, the hairpin, a little bit of a funny place. It's those marks and where he is suggests that he's been involved with a battle with somebody. You don't just find that particular spot on the road by accident.
Stephen Johnson in 7th. Let's have a look at this Helix replay of
a little bit of
Steve Ellery and Radicic. Remember, we heard from the pit before that Paul is battling with chronic understeer. Now here's this situation between Larry and McConville.
What happens here?
Oh, I see. Larry has a bit of a tank slapper. Oh, dear. Yeah, there had to be an explanation because that was very odd.
Well, this battle continues between Paul Radicic and Stephen Ellery. Ellery gets in front.
This is 11th and 12th, guys.
Stephen Johnson, his teammate, has done well. As before, he's jumped up to 7th. As a result of those pit stops, he was running well outside the top 20 before he came into the pit. So that's a classic example of the field coming back to the cars that stopped early. Paul Radicic carrying the Shell Helix in-car camera. A number of cameras on board the Shell Ford.
The cars from 2nd to 8th are all lapping within just the tiniest fractions. They're sort of doing mid-35s, 35 and 3/4. It's amazing.
Scaife's last time around was a 1:36.1.
But you got Radicic and Ellery on the other hand are in the 37. So this is a battle of the walking wounded. They're not happy cars. They're not looking after their tyres.
Right. 1:35.92. 36 for his teammate. So Holden Racing Team certainly controlling things here. It looks like Lowndes and Ambrose don't quite have just enough speed to make a positive pounce on the Holden Racing Team Commodore. Time running out for the two Ford runners. This has been a strong performance from the Gibson Motorsport operation, as two Stone brothers with Marcus Ambrose on board. Two very dedicated race drivers and teams, very determined to try and break the Holden Racing Team stranglehold.
And remember Marcus's move on, forgotten who it was now.
Yeah, we know what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. Into turn 4. Yeah, and that was just, okay, here I go. No, it was Jason Bright. He made that great move on Jason Bright earlier on, and that's what he'll be going through. He's going to be cycling through. Now, how did I get away with that now? And at the end of the race, he can probably afford, if he wants to be very cheeky, to maybe flat spot a front right tyre, because, I mean, he's not going to use it in the second race anyway. There's 10 tyres allocated for this race weekend.
A very impressive debut by the young Tasmanian. Look at how close Lowndes gets to the back of the Holden Racing Team car. Doesn't seem quite as quick out of there, the Holden coming out of the MG corner. And then he gets a real squirt of speed on through this final turn onto pit straight. 1 lap remaining for race leader Mark Scaife.
And at this point now, with just about 45 minutes of racing down, Craig's come on there in 4th gear. Everything's eggshells, Mark. You've just got to really be gentle with the brakes, gentle with the steering, and particularly gentle with the throttle, because if you fry up the rear tyres with wheel spin, you pay the penalty for 3 or 4 corners. Whoop, trouble here between White and Mazira. Again, turn 4. It's the hot spot on the track at the moment.
He's brought out a few cars today. Garth Tander. Oh, I hope he doesn't. Just gives things
on the way out.
So Tander miles back.
Look at Scaife. It's a very pleasant Sunday drive, thank you.
Isn't it just? 136.07. He's the A.
It's actually not correct, because it's anything but that. He'd be working very hard mentally, but you know, he's got this one totally bagged. It's a good job. 12.7 seconds.
The key for the
outsmarted them in qualifying, outsmarted them in terms of the race start, and outsmarted them in terms of strategy. So therefore, that little equation sums up with a win.
The really interesting thing about this is going to be race 2, because as you say, the tyre manager, you only got 10 tyres to play with this weekend. Whatever they end up on the car in race 2 is really going to play a very important part in determining the overall winner, because tyre management in these longer races is crucial to overall car performance. Here he comes.
Job's done for Mark, but this is the real pressure for second, third, and fourth between Bright, Lowndes and Ambrose. But a terrific drive. Can't say enough about this performance. His lap yesterday in qualifying was just superb. Mark Scaife's job was a great one yesterday, and he's gone on and done the job again today. Takes out the win in race 1, round 1. Huge
Let's have a look at Ambrose then.
Still a big battle going on for second place between Bright, Lowndes and Ambrose. Here they come across the line. No change. So Lowndes and Ambrose not able to get inside the Holden Racing Team 1-2, but a strong performance nonetheless from the AU XR8s in the opening round of the 2001 Championship. Field flashing across the line now. Murphy come in 5th, Stephen Richards in 6th, Stephen Johnson in 7th. Todd Kelly, good performance for the young line in his Kmart team debut. Russell Ingall, Glenn Seaton rounding out the top 10, and Paul Radicic, after running so strongly in the opening sector,
be interesting
outside the top 10.
Interesting now in some of the old debriefs, wouldn't it? You know, what's
and tyres will just
some will be relaxed and some won't.
Well, he's put in a very impressive performance all weekend, this man. He was absolutely electric in qualifying. Now he's continued that form in race 1. Good management, good strategy. Holden Racing Team have really shown the rest of this field once again how to go V8 supercar racing. They are a most formidable team. Craig Lowndes, though, great performance on his debut for Ford in the Shell Championship Series. They thought it would be a miracle if they qualified in the top 10. They've done better than that.
Oh, dear.
Replay of the collision between Matthew White and Thomas Mazira down there at turn 4.
Thomas won't be too pleased about that.
But that is domination on a grand scale. Mark Scaife 11 seconds up the road from his teammate. What a dominant performance. Craig Lowndes and Marcus Ambrose, they'd be happy with that on debut. Greg Murphy, Stephen Richards in 6th, Stephen Johnson in 7th. Todd Kelly rounded out the top 8.
Let's go back now and take a look at the Shell Helix race score of the entire result, and there's all 32 finishes. Mark Scaife was the winner, Jason Bright 2nd, Craig Lowndes 3rd, Marcus Ambrose. Now, significantly, we've marked a couple of guys here. Look at Greg Murphy and Stephen Johnson. They qualified 13th and 12th respectively, so they were real movers in the field, and they'll benefit for the second race. Further down the order, probably a little bit disappointing for Glenn Seaton to be back in 10th. Paul Radisich had a very difficult race. Brad Jones moved up a little bit. It was quite a good performance. Jason Bargwanna had a shocker right through to Anthony Tratt there in 32nd place. Now, one bloke who's really making a name for himself very early in V8 supercar racing this year is Marcus Ambrose. He's with Greg.
Well, boy, that was tough work out there, Marcus Ambrose. Your debut in the Shell Championship Series, 4th place in your first race. You must be delighted.
Yeah, very happy. You know, the boys are fantastic, and I couldn't do without the team. You know, the car's great, and it's quite easy for me. I glean all the information off them, and just trying to do my best out there. You know, we slipped from 2nd to 4th in the pit stops, but it's the first pit stop I've ever done, and yeah, we're brand new, so we can't. You know, we can only go forward from here. So it's been a great result.
For a rookie in this championship, you weren't prepared to let some of the more experienced guys rattle your feathers.
Well, no, you know, like I'm no novice. I've been across in Europe for 3 years, Formula 3 and the likes, you know. So you know, we played tough over there too. So all I want to do is stay out of trouble, get a finish, so we can start a decent spot in the second race.
Mate, so you've done that. Best of luck in race 2.
Yeah, thanks.